Welcome, everybody. Whether you're watching live or you're watching this as a recording after the fact, I am very excited to introduce to you the first in what's going to be a series of talks on quantum biology. Today is called Introduction to Quantum and Circadian Biology with my very special guest, Carrie Bennett. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, Ellie Stein, I'm a retired physician and psychiatrist. I retired after 35 years in medical practice. It's hard to believe. And the last 25 of those years, I spent working with the complex chronic disease community. So people who have myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, long COVID, fibromyalgia, autonomic dysfunction, mast cell activation, all these kind of things. And my passion became trying to help people who were falling between the cracks of the medical care system. And that passion came from my own experience as someone who became ill 37 years ago. I experienced a lot of those gaps in care personally. And it's one reason why I'm so excited to have Carrie talk to us today about quantum biology, because it fills some of these gaps that many of you have probably experienced. I'm just going to share with you a little bit about how I, uh, what's the word, like, came to understand how critical and important quantum biology is. I've been interested in it for many years. I've been looking on YouTube, looking at websites. And although there were a lot of interesting talks about it, they weren't yet at the stage where they were translating that knowledge into things that people like me could do. So I just kind of kept an eye on it. When I left home 11 months ago for the current travel adventure that I'm on, I began listening to podcasts. And I was spending a lot of time on the road, and I thought, what better opportunity to upskill some of my 35-year-old knowledge. So you can imagine my excitement this year when, for the very first time, I started searching and I found a wealth of information. And what I've listened to, literally multiple hundreds of hours over the past year, of all kind of conceivable speakers in the field, it's really changed how I think about chronic disease and how to heal from it. And in my listening journey, I very quickly came across Carrie Bennett. I've listened to many, many episodes of the podcast that she co-hosts called the Quantum Biology Collective Podcasts. And I've taken her very well-organized and clear online course called Quantum Reset. I was so impressed with her knowledge and her clear explanations that I contacted her to see if by any chance she would speak to this community, and she has graciously agreed. I'm going to quickly talk about the format of today, again, for those of you who are new, and then I'm going to introduce our special guest. So the format is a conversation. Some of you know that sometimes these are formal PowerPoints, but Carrie and I agreed a conversation is probably the best format for today. So I've taken the initiative to craft some questions that will hopefully stimulate Carrie to talk about some of the most important aspects of quantum and circadian biology, and most of all, to provide you with practical tips, things that you can start using right away to improve your health. Carrie and I are going to talk for about 40 minutes. Hopefully, I'll keep an eye on that clock. Then we're going to take a 10-minute break. And during that time, if questions have arisen for you, that's the perfect time to enter them in the chat. When we come back, we'll have up to 30 minutes of Q&A live with Carrie, and I will moderate that. I will do my very best to make sure your question gets asked. So Carrie Bennett is very well educated. She has multiple degrees in topics like biology, nutrition, and body work. She's a teacher at the Institute for Quantum Biology. This is the world's premier certification for what's now being called applied quantum biology in clinical practice. So if any of you are healthcare providers and our conversation today stimulates you to want to learn more and even to become a certified in quantum biology, that's the place to go. Carrie is a lead faculty member and on the board of advisors for the Quantum Biology Collective. And as mentioned, she's a co-host of their podcast. Carrie's relentless enthusiasm and I don't know, need to learn, I'm sure it's a need, has made her one of the leading educators in the field. She's invited all around the world to speak. So you are in for a very special treat. Welcome, Carrie.
Oh, that's so many kind words. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. So I'm going to dive right in. I've got a ton of questions,
Yeah,
and obviously we're not going to necessarily stick to the script. People who have tuned into me before know we'll go in whatever direction the
cool.
field takes us. Um, the community, Carrie, that you're speaking to today are primarily people with complex chronic diseases, some of the ones that I mentioned. So basically, they have severe chronic fatigue and chronic pain, usually some types of multiple sensitivities, chronic infections, autoimmune diseases, things like that. And they really appreciate guests who have been in the trenches, who have learned through personal experience. I know a little bit about your story. You've shared it on your podcast a few times. And I'm wondering if you'd kind of start us off by letting people know, like, how did you come to quantum biology and how has applying it in your own life changed things for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I came to it out of necessity. I think like a lot of us who are going through our own health journeys, certain models might fail us or might only take us so far. So the allopathic model really didn't address my what my body was asking for. And then I found the functional medicine model, which was interesting, right? It's what inspired me actually, because I'm to seek it out because I have a master's degree in applied clinical nutrition, and it's a lot of nutrition and supplement based protocols, gut health protocols, and it moved the needle a little bit. But what I was dealing with at the time, about 13 years ago now, was extreme chronic fatigue and insomnia at the same time. And then that led my body to just start to break down. So we're talking couldn't digest anything. Movement was starting to become painful, or I would just get random joint pain. I didn't know what I did, and my would wake up and my joints would just be very painful. And so I was really armed. What I thought I was armed as a clinician because at that point in time, I had an undergraduate degree in biology, a master's degree in clinical nutrition. Went to massage therapy school and studied Eastern philosophy in terms of the body, and nothing that I did moved the needle enough for me. And I just had this nagging feeling that there was something so fundamental about human health that I just hadn't come across yet. And that led me to just dive into my own research. And so I started Googling, like, what is fundamental to human health? And I came across this idea of circadian rhythm, and that our body has a need for understanding and syncing our circadian rhythm. And this was something that in all of my education, I had never come across before. And so you probably know by now, but taking things, just listening to podcasts, but I don't take anything at face value. It's like I have a need to know, like a deep desire to know the nitty gritty details about this. And so that phrase, circadian rhythm, led me down this rabbit hole of understanding how the human body needs light signals and light, and how that light influences so many aspects of our health. And so after I'd gone down, that rabbit hole of just deepening my knowledge, I began to say, okay, well, because I'm a clinician, I'm like, let me make this practical. What can I do with this information? And so I decided to just do two things basically and within days, I had felt more alert, more energy, just brain fog melted away. I actually started falling asleep, or actually started not just falling asleep, but staying asleep deeper. And that just inspired me to be like, wow, there's something here. And I just continue that journey and just tweaking it and then applying it with my clientele. And same thing. I saw people getting results like they had never had before for their energy, for their pain, for their sleep. And so this is where I really knew that this was something that was just so missing from all of my health education. And now I'm thrilled because I get to come and talk to people like you in communities like this and share information that is accessible, share information that is also can be very profound and something that people might not be aware of when they're helping to support their body through these complex chronic illnesses.
Wow, thank you. And can you maybe give an idea, just really briefly, like kind of where you were at before in terms of your health and where you're at now? Like just I know because I've listened to you many times, but it's pretty
Yeah.
dramatic, the
It
change.
it was, I mean, so I would say 13 years ago was also when my first child was born. And there's a lot of shifts and changes that come with that. But this went well beyond that. And this went for years beyond that, right? So I felt like I could fall. I always felt like I was in a movie theater, and I could at a boring movie, right? Like I could literally, the backs of my eyes, like I can still feel that sensation. I can't feel it, but I can still remember that sensation of like my eyes want to close,
Yeah.
but yet I couldn't actually sleep at night. Right. And so the digestion was so bad that it came to a point where I just had a little bite of an avocado, right? And I had never had a reaction to anything like avocado before. And I would react randomly to things. I had a little bite of an avocado and I was doubled over in stomach pain for 4 hours straight. And then that type of pain would just come on. And I just didn't know what to do about it. It's like, do I eliminate gluten? Do I eliminate everything? Let me do every 4 hour, 5 hour, 6 hour gut protocol that I could come up with. And so I was on a
Mhm.
restrictive diet. I had to be very aware of what I was eating, exhausted, yet still needing to try to be functional. New mom, I was still running a business. It was a different, still in the health space, but different than what it looks like now. And yeah, it just wasn't working for
And
me.
now, from what I gather, you're pretty much 100% like you're
Thriving. I'm thriving. I feel like I've
parenting,
reversed age.
working.
Three
Yeah.
kids, three busy kids, a husband, a busy business, thriving.
Yeah.
So thriving in so many ways, and just wake up with I'm just wait. I wake up and I'm excited. I mean, the pain that is gone. I mean, everything. I just want other people to experience this as well because I don't have any symptoms anymore, right? And so
Wow.
companies even want to send me like to try their products. It's like try my product out, and it's like okay, I can, but like I don't know if it can get any better than what it currently is. So I'm
Wow.
not sure what I'm going to feel with trying this product. And it just again, I want people to reach that point because I've been there. And also to be just for added inspiration,
Hmm.
I've worked in my private community, like with individuals. One individual, she had 9 diagnosed autoimmune conditions and was bedridden. Anytime she stood up, she had vertigo. And so, it was really her husband who helped her through the types of things that we're going to talk about today.
Hmm.
Those are all gone. Every autoimmune marker has disappeared. She is
Wow.
fully thriving again in her own business and teaching this to others. I mean, and I've had people who have, again, went from like high-powered ER physician flat on her back. Again, none of the functional conventional stuff touched it. And she couldn't even walk to her mailbox, right? Without being out of breath. And she was someone who, before she developed her illness, she was doing endurance mountain biking challenges. And she's back. She just texted me a picture last week from the Swiss Alps on her bike and like just back at it. So it's just so cool. It's so cool to see people and their journeys and their transformations with this.
So that's a great intro. So let's dive in with some of the details. Um, Can you tell us what quantum biology is? Like a lot of people are using that term. Probably a lot of people listening aren't too sure what it means. They're here out of curiosity. So what is it and how does it differ from our conventional explanations of health and disease?
Yeah. So that word quantum, I think, is what sets things apart. And it also, for some people, it provides a barrier because I think there's
Hmm.
typically a bias about that word, meaning, oh, that's for quantum physicists. That's beyond my grasp. I can't possibly understand something that involves the word quantum. And when we talk about quantum in the sense of quantum biology, biology is pretty simple. It's just how the human body operates, right? Like the functioning of the human body. But the quantum is the scale at which we're looking at the body and then trying to support and influence health at that quantum scale. And that quantum scale would be the tiniest scale, which means if I look at my body, we can look at my body as, a system of organs. We can look at those organs as being made up of cells. We can look at those cells as being made up of proteins and organelles, and all of those are made up of atoms. And all of those atoms, if we go way back to, when we maybe studied chemistry, it's like all those atoms are made up of electrons and protons and neutrons, and they receive light, emit light. And that's the quantum scale that we're looking at. So we're still looking at the human body. We're just understanding enough about how the body operates at that scale so that we can provide support strategies for people that really do, because we're addressing it at that really, really fundamental scale, they are really profound in terms of they can be very profound in terms of their impact.
Okay, I think that's really clear. And you've said, I've read somewhere you say, the quantum scale may be more helpful to you than all the things we normally turn to, diet, exercise, sleep, all of those things. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because people are going to go, how could that be?
So if to understand that in quantum science, there's a phrase that's called non-linear effects. And when we're addressing things at that quantum scale, you can literally do one thing that initiates a whole cascade of things, and you get like a cascade of signals and improvement. And what we're used to in just, everyday society, we're used to things that are linear. So for example, if I wanted to get stronger, I couldn't just do one push-up every single day and expect to get stronger. I would need to do one push-up, and then when that became easy, I would do two, and when that became easy, I would do three and four, and I would have to do a linear progression of more and more and more. But when you're addressing things at the quantum scale, for example, you'll hear in this presentation, go outside in the morning around sunrise, 3 minutes. It's not that you have to do 3 minutes and then 4 minutes and 5 minutes to continue to get a benefit. It's that you can address it in that one moment. And because we're using a light, that's a quantum information that we're gathering in, you're going to kickstart a cascade of effects. And so that's why this can be really profound, is because you get these non-linear effects that are happening for our health.
Wow, that's very interesting. Um, and most of the interventions for quantum biology involve nature, yes?
Yes,
So
yes.
getting out in the light, touching the earth, drinking water. Um, and so some people might think, how could nature really be that powerful? And I'm wondering if you can just give a little plug for nature. How can you convince people, yes, this is really worth putting effort into?
Well, we can absolutely. So I think the reason why I think it's very common for people to hear, oh, yeah, yeah, okay, I'm going to go outside. Sure, that's fine. But what's the really important things that I should do? And the reason why I think people will understand why nature is important is because we now can break down the science of nature. And these
Mm.
days, science really is a language of communication that oftentimes people need to hear or understand in order to appreciate doing something or making a change in their lifestyles. And so that's because nature contains natural light. Natural light has key signals. Nature contains a stronger connection to the Schumann resonance that organizes our brain waves. Earth contains free charge, free electrons, free nourishment if we can touch it and pull it in. So that's what we're talking about from this quantum biology lens. It's that nature provides so much, and now we can use a scientific language to explain it that I think allows people to appreciate it enough that they start to try it out for themselves to notice the benefit.
And maybe just last question before we dive into exactly what some of the interventions are. What are some of the ways, like, why are we so starving for nature? And my guess is it's because in our modern lifestyle, we've become so disconnected from nature. I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, we have become very disconnected from nature. And I think what I never took into consideration was that nature provided really anything for me, right? It was
Mm.
nice to look at, but it wasn't a necessity. And that light inside of my house or light coming from a screen to illuminate my living environment, for example, would provide me with the exact same thing I needed as natural light from the outside. I never thought that the surface of the earth provided me any electrical nourishment. So I never even thought about connecting my feet to it. It's like shoes are great, right? I can go places and not hurt my feet, right? So let me wear shoes all the time. Um, and so we really have divorced ourselves because we can technically live divorced from nature. I can live inside without the natural lighting, without earth growing in my home. But I think our being divorced from the key signals is really contributing to the chronic diseases that we're seeing and an inability to fully heal and recover because of how little value I placed, at least, on what nature could provide me when it comes to helping my body heal and thrive.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. When I look back, I just shake my head. During COVID, I was inside all the time on Zoom with
Right.
shoes. Yeah,
I
say
know.
no more. So let's dive in. I'm going to start with light. I think most people in the field do. Why is exposure to natural light and avoidance of what we call man-made junk light so important? What does light actually do for us?
Yeah. So light, the best way for me to start to describe light so that we could notice the difference between natural light and artificial light is to explain it through the lens of when we split sunlight, we've all seen it split through a prism or a rainbow. And you see that that natural light has all the colors with it, right? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet that we can see. And there's some colors beyond that that we cannot see. A huge portion in the infrared spectrum and a little portion in the ultraviolet spectrum. And what we now know, or we're starting to acquire more knowledge about, is that those colors actually signal different processes to happen in my body. One specific wavelength range of those colors is the blue. And that blue light actually helps our body tell time. And we can talk about that in light of maintaining a strong circadian rhythm. And the beautiful part about light coming from nature, and again, I say natural light, not sunlight, because some of us live where it's not always sunny. But where you get natural light, whether it's behind clouds, whether it's sunny, behind a building, a tree, the light that what we're talking about is the same. That light that's coming from nature, it actually the blend of colors doesn't say static. It's not the same exact amount and intensity from when the sun wakes up in the morning till when it sets at night. And instead, that sun is changing its frequencies. It's layering on more. It's building more intensity till when it reaches the high point in the sky. And then it's taking free light away in terms of different colors and intensities until it's going to be a period of darkness at night. And it's that blend and change. It's like a crescendo and decrescendo of varying light signals that the body keys in on to organize all of our cellular tasks, all the tasks of our organs. It's called our circadian rhythm. And when we sync our body up to those changing frequencies, it's almost like we have the conductor back in the orchestra. And all of a sudden, we know how to get back into tune and we know when we need the percussion and we need the woodwinds. Everything can start to play together in an organized way. Whereas when we don't have that, you'd imagine what an orchestra could sound like. Let's say a middle school orchestra, right? Could sound like if they didn't have a conductor. Or I liken it to an airport that didn't have an air traffic control tower, right? That could be utter chaos. And so that's what's happening when we don't have that organizing factor of light. It truly is that fundamental. It's a timekeeper and so fundamental for our body and our cells to know when to operate and how to operate that has just been completely ignored or just forgotten, I guess. I mean, I'm certain there was this esoteric knowledge, and it's just now coming back into vogue because we realize how important it is.
So maybe I'll ask you, what's your recommendation for the circadian aspect of light, right? To keep the conductor in the front of the orchestra. And then after that, I'm going to ask you, because this was really mind-blowing for me, when I started hearing some of the ways in which light signals our bodies to do specific tasks, I was like totally blown away. So I'd love you to share a few of those. But excuse me, what what's your recommendation, kind of simple recommendation to get started to help keep that light signal present so we stay on time?
Sure. So the thing to be aware of is the way that we keep time, the way that conductor kind of knows time and knows when to, call on different organs to be more active or cells to run different tasks, is that we've got a little clock in our brain. And that clock in our brain, its fancy name is our suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's in our hypothalamus, and we've got that little clock literally has a physical direct track to the backs of our eyes. And the backs of our eyes have sensors for blue light, that blue wavelength range that we were talking about. And the beautiful part about how we've engaged with nature, how we're designed to engage with natural light, is that that blue coming from natural light is very little at sunrise, grows in intensity to solar noon. So that's the max amount of blue, and then goes back down and decreases until there's no blue light after sunset. And campfire doesn't have it, right? It wouldn't have that the same intensity. So we would have literally had this increasing blue, decreasing blue, absence of blue. That helps us tell time through the light that's reaching the eyes. And so I tell people that the intelligence of the human body is such that we go outside more and just be outside with naked eyes. Try not to wear sunglasses. And if you do wear glasses, if in safe ways, put them at the top of your head so that you can just get all of that changing blue. The eyes will know what to do. They'll capture it. They'll say, okay, for me here, it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so my eyes will know how much blue is firing. It'll know, it'll be able to gauge where the sun is above the horizon, and it'll be able to tell time of day and even time of year. It's that exquisite. And so we just have to get the signal more frequently. And up until, 10, 13, well, up until 13 years ago, I was wearing sunglasses all the time because I've got very light blue eyes, and I always have. And I just thought that I needed to protect them. And, I built in what I think I developed a sensitivity to bright light because I was always wearing sunglasses. So my brain was never knowing what time of day it was. And so simply going outside, you can sync up. But if you layer in some of the strategies that I really coach, you do something called block the artificial light before sunrise. And the reason we want to do that is that the light that we get coming from modern bulbs and screens is very aggressive in the blue. The blue is the dominant frequency if you look at the blend. So it looks nothing like light through a prism. If you look at what's called a spectrographic readout of the light, big spike of blue, a little bit of green, yellow, orange, but the only time in nature, the only time outside when blue would be the dominant wavelength is when the sun's at the high point in the sky. So what our little receptors are trying to interpret is, okay, lots of blue, no other colors. I look at my phone when I wake up first thing in the morning, or I flip on a bunch of these modern LEDs. My brain is fast forwarding to the middle of the afternoon. And so I tell people to block the artificial light in the morning before they wake up using something as simple as orange toned blue blockers, right? So blue blockers that have a deeper orange tone to them that you could put on and just have by your bedside table, because I also ask my clients to put these on at nightfall, which is when darkness sets in their local environment. The orange color of the lens blocks the blue from light bulbs and from screens from entering the brain. So even though we have modern lighting or modern screens, we're not creating that confusing signal. And instead, it very much mimics campfire. So it's like I'm waking up to campfire. I go outside in the morning around sunrise, or depending, there's nuance. I've got work with people who live in Iceland, Greenland. So there's nuance. You basically wake up and let natural light be the first light that your eyes see. And if natural light's not available, you wear these. And then, again, at sunset, you'll see, or around nightfall, you'll see campfire, and you can still live a fairly modern life, but you will allow your body to sink in and at least understand especially the start of the day. So going out in that morning, that is a huge nonlinear effect, because when the brain starts to see increasing blue, that little bit of increasing blue in the morning, so much magic takes place. Can I keep going and go into the magic?
Yeah. A little bit more and then yeah.
Okay, sure.
Some of the things that the blue does in addition to the timekeeper. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
it's so crazy.
That little rise of blue in the morning, actually, from that clock in the brain, it communicates, hypothalamus pituitary, it communicates to our adrenal glands and to reproductive organs as well. And so what happens in the adrenal glands is the little mitochondria that live in our adrenal glands, they start to make a hormone called pregnenolone. And pregnenolone is like what's called the master sex hormone. And that pregnenolone then gets to get cut up or metabolized into cortisol. And cortisol gets a bad reputation. We need a surge of cortisol first thing in the morning in a circadian designed way, because that surge of cortisol in the blood is another part of the symphony. The brain, all the organs then can say, oh, yep, cortisol's elevated. Let's rev up X, Y, and Z. And so it really is a key signal. And when I was at my worst, I did do a whole bunch of testing, like functional testing, and my cortisol was flatlined, completely flatlined. And so I knew that I had not been getting the correct signaling happening with light through my eyes. And so not only do we get that natural surge of that hormone called cortisol, but the other sex hormones get ferried up and divided into all of their natural balanced blend. So as I started to engage in this light practice of going outside in the morning, I started to get a lot more energy. And then I started to recover my cycle, my menstrual cycle. And started to experience much more regular. I mean, now they're perfectly regular, but much more regular cycles. No more PMS symptoms, no symptoms of what I think I had some estrogen dominance going on. And so if you think about it, it was just because I started to engage with light differently that all of these things started to come back on track and funnel themselves where they needed to go.
Right. I would love to go on, but I'm aware we've got a couple more big topics
Sure.
before we take our break. So the next topic is earthing or grounding. Can you explain how to do it and what the benefits are?
Yeah, sure. So the surface of the Earth actually has electrical charge to it. It's called negative. It's a negatively charged surface, or we'll say it's full of electrons. And that's because lightning actually helps to maintain that electrical circuit of the Earth by discharging electricity back where the Earth might be starting to lack that negative charge. So the way to say it would be, if the earth itself needs that negative charge to maintain health in general. It's what helps give charge for the plants to grow. I mean, every creature that needs the earth, all of us, right, relies on that charge. And it turns out that we can pull that charge into our bodies through bare skin. And when we do that, earth literally acts as one of our best antioxidants. So I think people are familiar that antioxidants can calm inflammation. But all antioxidants they're just substances that can donate an electron. And that donation of an electron all of a sudden takes something in the body from being inflammatory to calm. And so what better way than to go to like help the body calm inflammation than touching the surface of the earth? And through bare skin, we can funnel those electrons into the body where inflammation is happening, and we can start to calm the inflammation. And so you'll see that if anyone's interested, you can see, for example, the company Earth Runners, they make a sandal, an earthing sandal, but they've got great education on this as well. And you'll see before and after images where you can see what's called a thermographic scan, where someone has aggressive inflammation in the knees, lighting up as red, like pink and red, like really aggressive inflammation. And when inflammation is calmed, you'll see blue and green. And so they'll take these people and they'll show up, give them a thermographic scan, and they'll show where their inflammation is. They will have them go outside in earth for 20 to 40 minutes. And then they'll do an after scan, and you'll see a significant reduction in inflammation that quickly.
Wow.
So again, we're designed to be in constant contact, because even if it wasn't through bare skin, you can still be conductive through animal hide. And so it's only until the advent of rubber soles, right, that we really became that disconnected from Earth. And all these things just start to add up. And so when I started to realize that, oh my gosh, there is so much about nature that we just aren't taking advantage of, because, and sharing in those gifts, those healing gifts. And when I got my clients to start to do it, again, healing from pretty debilitating
Amazing.
conditions, right?
And
So,
can you say something, Carrie? So I'm here in Ecuador right now. I've been going outside in the salt water
mm.
twice a day, but some people just sent me an email this morning from Canada and showed me the deep snow. So say you're living in northern Canada right now and you've got snow on the ground. What are some strategies for earthing?
Yeah, you know what's interesting, and I can't say this is true of every country in the world because
Hmm.
I've not tested them, but most countries, buildings have to be grounded, right? Just in
Okay.
case there's a lightning strike. So by grounding it, they have to ground their pipes and their plumbing. And which just means that basically there's a metal way of the piping is connected with metal, with conductive metal into the earth. But it turns out that that means that any flowing water going through your pipes, even if the pipes themselves are not all metal, they could be PVC, the essentially that metal connection to the earth and then the water that flows through the pipes, that water is also a conductor of that earth energy. So you could soak in a bathtub, you could do
Oh, okay.
dishes, you could wash your hands, you could be taking a shower. And I've tested this in, I mean, multiple countries, and multiple
Hmm.
states as well. Yeah, like going to various hotels and Airbnbs. And you can actually do indoor earthing that way. You can also get little indoor earthing mats. I have one from Intuition Physician that I love. And also in the middle of winter, I also even love to take a boiling pot of water and dump it outside, like next to my patio, just on a strip of grass where
Mm,
that's covered in ice and snow. I'll just take some boiling water, dump it on there, and then I'll just stand there for a few minutes because the anti-inflammatory or antioxidant effect can take, if someone has some chronic inflammation, that can take about 20 minutes or more. But instantaneously, you're going to get electron flow happening. And instantaneously, you're going to get a balancing of our fight or flight nervous system with our rest and digest nervous system. And so for those of us who have gone through these healing journeys that have been long time healing journeys, oftentimes there's an imbalance in those nervous systems. And by connecting to the earth, you actually can see in with using various technologies, you can literally see things come back into regulation and back into balance, which means that the body can say, oh, I'm not under that constant threat like I thought I was. And now I can actually
okay.
devote time and energy to healing.
And so would you say that these indoor devices like mats and bands and bed sheets and things, if properly grounded, are equally as effective as being outside?
Yes, I have clients who, whether it's because of their weather or lack of mobility, do have to
Yeah.
use the grounding products. And yes, if you are plugged into a grounded outlet, yes,
Hmm.
they are doing the
Okay.
same thing. And the way that I've tested this is you can get something called a continuity meter, right? Which is
Okay.
basically a little meter that will show you, am I connected to Earth's electrons or am I not? So that's what I've done. And I've had clients do, they're fairly inexpensive and it'll show that, yes, I am connected to Earth's electrons. And then just based on symptom improvement or how someone feels, you can start to see the benefits that you get from that.
Okay. I think the last big topic I want to touch on is mitochondria, and that's because, again, mitochondrial dysfunction is so big of an issue for this community of people who have chronic fatigue and
Yeah.
chronic pain. Um, a lot of people in the community know because they've read or heard that many problems have been found with mitochondrial function, and they're waiting for some big research discovery to help them. So I'm wondering if you could say something, and of course, those discoveries could be many years off. So what does quantum biology have to say about why our mitochondria in people with chronic disease in general might be functioning on low gear?
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of things with modern living that can
Hmm.
create low functioning mitochondria. And by low functioning mitochondria, we basically mean they're not able to make energy. And in quantum biology, that's water and ATP. And so it could be a toxin exposure. It could be what are called the wireless radiation that's coming from cell phones and smart technologies. Those actually have
So
been
it
shown.
affects the
It
mitochondria.
absolutely can affect
How does that happen, Carrie?
the
Do you know the
mitoc
mechanism at all?
I do, and I don't want to get overly complex
Yeah.
with this, but what happens is the mitochondria, they stop moving electrons. And that's their whole job, is to
Okay.
take electrons again to make energy. And they're unable to move electrons efficiently to make energy, and you're losing electrons. And remember, those unpaired electrons, that's inflammation.
Right.
That's the name of it. So that's the name of the game. And there's a more complex mechanism at play if anyone's interested. But that's a huge one that people don't realize, that we have a lot of these wireless radiation around us all the time. And so maybe that's something that hasn't been looked at during these complex chronic healing journeys. So the non-native EMFs, and then lastly, believe it or not, mitochondria need optimum light signals to function best.
Yeah.
Blue light, that spike of blue light from artificial light, not from nature, can inhibit mitochondrial function. And the blend of light that you get from nature, was specifically the red range of light, red and infrared, that actually has been shown to make mitochondria function better, which is why things like red light therapy devices have been developed, right? Because they're noticing. But yes, devices, they can be supportive, but nature, it's always there. There's from sunrise till sunset, you're going to get red and infrared light that can stimulate the mitochondria. So I think part of that is also that we don't have those wavelengths in our interior environments. They're not in modern light bulbs. They were in incandescent bulbs, but they're not in modern light bulbs. And so I think it really is just like this effect of, again, not getting the correct light into our bodies, or on, signaling through the eyes or onto our bodies in order to optimize that mitochondrial function.
Yeah, I read something last night because I'm preparing for Scott Zimmerman's talk, and I
Uh-huh.
can't remember the exact percentage, but it was a big percentage, like more than half of the energy that fuels our body comes from the sun.
It's designed
Most
to.
people think
Yeah.
100% of the energy comes from food.
I would, yeah,
It's very like
it,
striking. Yeah.
if I were to give it a number, an estimate just based on clinical practice, I would say a third comes from food, and you can get the other two-thirds
Wow.
from things like earthing and sunlight and the various ways that sunlight interacts with the body.
Wow. And maybe the
Mhm.
last question is about water. You talk a lot about, and I get asked this all the time and I don't have a good answer. So, how much water should we drink? What type of water should we drink?
Yeah, yeah, I can come back and do an entire webinar on water. So the number one, unfortunately we do have to filter our water these days, because municipal tap supplies, because they're looking to make sure that there's no microbes, no bacteria in the water. They're adding some stuff that kills the microbes, but is also not great for us. So filter the water. But
Mhm.
when we filter water, the number of clients who have come to me who have been on these, healing journeys, who drink a lot of water, but it's reverse osmosis or distilled water, because they said, okay, yeah, I need to filter my water. And so they drink it and they're peeing it out. So it's like they drink and then 20 minutes later
Yeah.
got to use the bathroom. And so they're not absorbing their water. And so what I have found is beneficial is to think about transforming the water that you have coming from the tap to as close as you can get from a pristine natural spring. Pristine natural spring water doesn't have toxins, so you got to filter the water. It has minerals, and those minerals don't necessarily provide a lot of mineral content for our body, but minerals in the water help our bodies want to absorb the water into our bloodstream more efficiently. So I like
Mhm.
clients to add some minerals back in, and I can give some examples of that. And then I always like my clients to do something that moves the water, like vortexes it. There's water structuring devices, because water in nature has moved and has vortexed on its journey up to the surface
Right.
of the earth. And that process actually imparts a lot of good qualities to the water that makes that water more readily absorbed into our bodies. So when clients do that, they actually end up drinking less water, but also peeing less. It's like, so instead of drinking, let's say 2.5 liters a day, and then just eliminating it all the time, they're drinking maybe 1.5 liters, but they're feeling hydrated. Their urine they're still urinating a good quality color, right? But they're feeling hydrated, and they notice it, and because they don't have their headaches anymore. Their skin is different, their hair is different, lots of different awarenesses that they get when they start absorbing that water again.
Thank you so much. There is so much we could do. I see
So much.
questions are pouring in. So I think we should stop, take our 10-minute break, and then I'm going to do my very best to get through as many questions as possible.
Well,
These are short snappers. So first question at the very beginning, Carrie, you said that you did two things that really made a fast difference. Someone wants to know what were they?
I went outside in the morning
Yep.
for, and I started making it a morning walk. And then I bought a good pair of orange tone blue blockers and I
Okay.
started just wearing them at night. And it shifted things quicker than I ever thought could be possible.
Great. So this is probably addressed to me. Don't refer to COVID in the past tense.
What's
So
that?
my mistake, what I should have
Yeah.
said, maybe we can mute people, Megan. What I should have said is the COVID lockdown. So when we were locked down and not allowed out, I didn't have any idea the impact that might be having on my health. Um, Quite a few questions here about eye protection. So, what about aging eyes? What about risk of cataracts? What about macular degeneration? What about if you've already had cataract surgery? So, that whole basket.
Yeah, the whole eye thing. So it's fascinating when I first started, because I had several clients who were in this situation as well. And when I started to say, okay, well, what is the research? What's happening with that? Because my clients who were getting cataracts or macular degeneration were wearing sunglasses outside all the time for decades even, and were just inside a lot. And so I thought to myself, something's a little off here, because they and so the
Mm,
current research with it is showing that this really bright blue light coming from screens is a primary driver, because the research is calling it high energy visible light. So blue is a high energy visible wavelength range. And it made the most sense to me because these were clients who, like I said, for decades, they would wear dark colored sunglasses outside, but were living more indoors. They retired or maybe were becoming less mobile. And now all of a sudden they were developing these cataracts as they were using their computers more, their screens, their cell
yeah.
phones, their tablets. So what I'm telling people is, believe it or not, that the screen technology is, I believe, a primary driver. Maybe you might have had it even starting because of, let's say, you were outside a lot. But I would actually beg to differ on that one. And you want to work on wearing a good quality pair of blue blockers to mitigate what's coming from the screens. And when you look at what is being done now to reverse the eye damage, and there is research being done, they're using, with eyes closed, red light therapy panels in the morning. At morning hours. And interestingly, only the morning time session is actually working. And they're getting an improvement in mitochondrial function that's translating to eyes that are healing, or at least preventing the further
Mhm.
development of cataracts, glaucoma, those sorts of things. So what's missing in modern lighting is the red and the infrared light, the near infrared light that we get from nature and naturally would have had access to with those morning wavelengths of light. And so I'm telling people, you never want to be outside and have your eyes experiencing true discomfort. Like, so if you're in a bright situation, or if you're with light reflecting off the snow or off of water, which are both not natural, like that's not a natural version of light, then feel free to protect your eyes. Or if you're outside in a setting and you are concerned, wear a hat. But you can, and that'll prevent the light from directly penetrating, but you can still get the benefits that I'm talking about with a hat on or sitting in the shade from the changing circadian signaling. And so I
Okay.
highly encourage people to experiment with that.
Great. Thank you. And some of the questions Megan has answered, just clarifying terminology and things. So someone's saying, go outside, even if it's cloudy, it doesn't matter.
Does
Yep.
not matter. Doesn't matter. Rainy, cloudy, foggy, snowy, does not matter.
Okay. Can you share the brand of blue blocking glasses you recommend?
Yeah, I've got a range, right? So the ones that I'm
Yeah.
wearing are from a company called Viva Rays. These are their yellows. I wear them when I'm in front of screens. I don't wear them like when I did my little light break outside. I did not have them on. They come in, multiple ones as well, orange tone and red for my people who are really extreme night owls might need the reds, but for the most part, you can wear a pair of orange ones. And I don't know if you want to link this also, but I have
Hmm.
all of the products and a wide range of prices and where you can curate them on the planet at carriebwellness.com/products. You can look at my blue blockers there. Blue blocker
Okay.
recommendations.
And I often recommend the other end of the spectrum, which is the UVEX by
Vex is
Honeywell. And I've
great.
heard they're cheap, they're not attractive, but they do the job.
They do the job. Another one that's
Yeah.
cheap and easy for people to get on Amazon is from Spectra 479. Again,
Okay.
you're looking like welder's goggles, but
Yeah.
my family loves them. They love those ones. They're super easy to wear and they're really reasonably priced.
So question, did you say that I can earth through leather?
Yeah, you can. Now, the caveat there is that the more hydrated your skin is, because so the reason, unlike let's say apes, for example, we actually develop sweat glands on our skin and on the hands and the feet, because part of that is a conductive electrolyte fluid in our called our sweat that helps us connect more strongly to earth. And so I would say that if I were to measure through what's called a continuity meter, wearing, let's say, plain leather moccasins with no artificial lining at all, no artificial soles,
Hmm.
it'd be mildly conductive, but not the exact same as bare skin or bare feet
Okay.
touching the earth.
So bare skin's the best.
The best, definitely.
Okay. Um, so this person is asking a pretty complicated question about melatonin and that people with ME make it differently and opposite. And I know there's been some research on that. So I'm
Sure.
maybe going to invite you to just share a little bit. It's a bit of a spoiler alert of Scott's research showing that being out in the sun actually helps us make melatonin
It
because it might
does.
override the question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just so you know, that one particular client who was in the Swiss Alps now, she had ME was the main ME and fibromyalgia, main things that she was dealing with. When you look at a lot of the research on melatonin production, and it's made in two different ways, but when you look at when you look at melatonin production in the studies, they're not controlling for light exposures. And we know that artificial light at night, exposure to that tanks melatonin, absolutely suppresses it. And we know then that getting exposure to morning light and then blocking the artificial light at night actually helps to maximize melatonin production. The studies, I have some questions with the studies, because are these individuals not able to make it, or are they not getting the correct stimuli?
Hmm.
Darkness essentially, and the correct morning light to be able to make it. And in my clinical experience working with enough of these individuals, they can make it. They absolutely can make it if they get the correct stimuli. Um,
Okay.
that really quickly too, that pineal
Yeah.
melatonin we make at night that signals darkness and helps us to fall asleep, that's only 5% of the melatonin we make. And I know Scott's going to talk all about this
Yeah.
other version of melatonin that we can make inside of our bodies that is absolutely important to maximize. And spoiler alert, it involves light as well. So
Thank you so much. Um, okay, simply amazing. Someone says minimum time to ground on the earth for benefit. So I'm just going to say this is one of a group of questions. What's the least I can do, right? What's the least number of minutes I need to be outside? What's the least number of minutes I need to be outside to ground?
love it, because I'm a busy mom, busy. So
Yeah.
I've played around with what I call minimum effective dose. And so I would say for the light signaling through the eyes in the morning, um, I would say accumulating within the first 2 hours of light in the morning, accumulating 20 minutes. And that
Okay.
could be driving to work or to school with the windows cracked down, or parking in your work parking lot and just getting some extra natural light in. But like a minimum accumulation throughout those morning hours of 20 minutes. But just be consistent. The more important thing, and I always say this, consistency over perfection. So I would rather someone get 2 minutes in the morning consistently, and then every once in a while they might be able to do 20, or maybe they'll even do an hour, but those 2 minutes do matter. And so even if
Okay.
it's just my little light break was a 2 minute light break, but and so like little hits can absolutely matter. For the earthing and the grounding, it depends on how much inflammation is going on, right?
Hmm.
But again, little bits of accumulation can add up. But if you're looking at the before and after effect that we saw on those scans, it was at about 20 to 40 minutes of
Okay.
continuous earthing that resulted in that.
Okay. Someone is asking, yes, we got that. What is a countertop water filter that you would recommend?
There's some great, so a great one is actually from a company called Greenfield Water Solutions. They've got this large one's made out of ceramic and one's made out of copper, but it goes through a multi-stage filtration process that keeps the beneficial minerals, gets rid of the garbage, and then vortexes it and adds structure as well.
Wow.
So those are two very good options, yeah, that they have there.
All in one. Can you just say the
All in
name
one.
again? Green.
Greenfield water
Greenfield.
solutions.
Okay, Megan will be on that.
Thanks, Megan. That's awesome.
Someone's asking about drinking hydrogenated water. I'm guessing this might mean
Hydrogen water.
hydrogen-rich water. So if you
Yep.
can say anything
Yeah.
about that.
There can be massive benefits to that. Interestingly, when they went and they looked at blue zones, because we've always looked at
Hmm.
blue zones in regards to the places where people live the longest and the healthiest, they looked at food. But someone went back and said, well, what about the water? And so many of these blue zones had high amounts of hydrogen, molecular hydrogen, it's called, in their water. And so, yeah, I love hydrogen-rich water and molecular hydrogen as a therapy. There's a lot of companies that can deliver it. You can deliver it via a tablet dissolved in the water. There's big machines that will bubble it into your water. I have a system under the sink system that I use to filter my water, structure it, and remineralize it. That also has a little faucet that will pour hydrogen-rich water from Spring
Wow.
Aqua. The company is Spring Aqua. So a lot of great options when you can to get that hydrogen, but it absolutely has a therapeutic effect. Highly, highly recommend.
Okay. This is a great question. If devices are off, does the Wi-Fi in the house still affect us?
If you have the Wi-Fi on, it does,
Yes.
because the Wi-Fi router itself is always pulsing out, looking to connect to the devices. So I highly encourage people to unplug their Wi-Fi router at night, or you can get what's called a kill switch. So for example, techwellness.com. August is the owner. She's developed a little switch that you can connect to your wireless router. So all you need to do when you're at bed is have it on your nightstand and you click it and it'll turn it off. And then you click it and it'll turn it back on when you wake up. So it's not like, oh, I got to unplug this thing. And like, that's what I used to do. It's like, oh, and so it makes it really easy to do.
I've also heard you share that you're a wired person. So I got wires all over the place here, exactly wired. My computer's wired right now. I just go with LAN cables
Yeah.
that run all over
Wire
my,
everything if you can. I
yeah.
know.
Um, Bulb, where do you get incandescent bulbs? Someone's saying buy a heat lamp bulb that is used for baby chickens.
Yeah, you absolutely can. I saw
Okay.
someone said that they were actually got like one of those red heat bulbs. I had one of those. I've had one of those before. They're phenomenal. They do get hot. So if you have
Yeah.
young children or pets, be aware. You can still buy, at least in certain states, Michigan is one of them, and I believe more and more of my clients are finding them again on Amazon, but you could buy what are called decorative incandescent bulbs.
Mm,
So you can get those little tiny decorative ones that look like Edison style. There's also a company called Chroma that sells full spectrum incandescent. Now be aware they do sell good quality full spectrum LEDs, but I'm an incandescent girl. So you can get their
mhm.
full spectrum incandescent bulb as well.
Okay, great. Um, how do you remineralize RO water? And someone else has asked, what supplement or minerals do you use?
Yeah, so the minerals that I use specifically for the water, you can choose, but what I choose is what's called a natural full spectrum blend of either ocean-based minerals or earth-based minerals. The ocean ones could be like this one is called Aqua Vive Ionic Trace Minerals, Aqua Vive Ionic. It's just
Hmm.
ocean, basically ocean salt minerals, right? And in a big thing like this, so this is just, let's say that if this was just RO water in a big liter, I would probably put, I don't know, 4 drops, not droppers, but like 4 drops,
Hmm.
just enough to give it some mineral charge to it. There's also fulvic-based mineral supplements or minerals that you can add to water, and that's an earth-based mineral blend. But I do find that the body resonates with those natural versions of mineral blends when they're dissolved in the water.
Okay. So this is a really interesting question. So now that the days are getting slightly longer, why do some people in northern climates get brain fog and fatigue?
I think part of that is if they're indoors and it's just
Mm,
an extended period of time of maybe feeling productive for an extended period of time, but still just being indoors. And what
yeah.
I notice is that when I'm inside and I don't get those light check-ins, come 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it just kind of feels like, oh, right. And so the antidote to that is I go outside for a 5-minute walk or stretch. Heck, sometimes I'll even have to still do work on my phone, but I'll do work on my phone with the dominant light source being natural light, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Okay, thank you. Do satellites in the morning have positive quantum benefits?
Um, Research shows that they can be beneficial, but what they're doing is they're creating a very bright dose of a lot of blue light to
Mhm.
really get a huge cortisol surge or just a really big burst that doesn't fluctuate or change. And so I used to have SAD. That was another one of the things, being in Michigan, right in the winter, I used to have a pretty severe SAD and have one of those big light boxes. And those light boxes almost made me feel like too caffeinated, right? Like a huge, like, oh my gosh, like from 0 to 60. And so all I started doing in the middle of winter was taking a 20-minute walk, a 10-minute walk, a 5-minute walk, healed SAD. And it's happened for dozens, if not more, people have reached out to me around the planet who have done the same exact thing. So I'm not a huge fan of them. I think natural light is our better option because you get the
Okay.
change in light. Get that change in light. That's a
So
signal.
what about for people that are really, we've kind of said it before, have to stay inside for whatever reason? Do mosquito screens block the light? Do
No,
windows block the light? So how
great
can you be inside
questions.
and still get some light?
Yeah, these are great questions. So in my clients who have to stay inside or maybe for mobility reasons or are just really at that point where it's tough to get out of bed,
Hmm.
we've worked with them to figure out where they can position their bed or have someone help them position their bed or their chair in the brightest part of the room. And while window glass does block a lot of the light frequencies, it's way better than just having a bunch of artificial light. And so I encourage you to
Okay.
be next to that window. And if you can open that window, even if there's a screen, the screen has little holes in it, and those little holes let all the light signaling through.
Okay.
And so I've done a number of clients who have positioned key chairs and their bed and things to get this signaling throughout the day, even indoors.
Great. So here's another question about water. What about alkaline water, ionized hydrogen infused water, for example, from Alka Viva Vesta?
Yeah, sure. It's
Okay.
similar to like a Kangen machine. Um, so it's not the alkaline part that's important. And what alkaline water originally stemmed from was they thought it was this alkalinity of the water that was providing health benefits. And the owner of that company, the head scientific researcher of that original company said, "Oh, but there's a lot of molecular hydrogen in here. What if it's the hydrogen in the water that has the effect?"
Mm,
And they realized it's the hydrogen in the water that really makes the difference. So it doesn't have to be alkaline water, hydrogen rich water. So I'm not familiar with that particular company. I haven't researched it
hmm.
myself, but hydrogen rich water is what has the benefit when it comes to what you
Got it.
oftentimes have been given to alkalinity.
What about regular prescription glasses? So you go outside, you said take your glasses off,
Slide them down your nose,
but you
right?
need prescriptions to see how do you negotiate that?
Yeah, so what's fascinating is that when people start to go out into natural light, I've had, again, dozens of people say that they've improved their eyesight to the extent
Wow.
that, to the extent there's like, I don't want to have to buy more lenses. Like I just bought a new pair of lenses, like in terms of getting better. Um, so I tell people if they really truly need them, put a chair somewhere where you can just go to that chair, it's in the light. And then
Hmm.
once you get to your chair safely with your glasses on, just take your glasses off and just sit there, right? Because you don't have to stare at the sun, you don't have to focus to the sky. Just sit there and allow the natural light to go in. And if you could do that as much
Okay.
as possible, that can really be a benefit.
Um, do blue blockers have to be yellow, orange, or red? Someone's bought ones that are not.
The ones that aren't block about 20% of like let's just say they block at the most 20% of just a small portion of the blue light. So it's
Okay.
for simplicity, blue light, let's say, runs from 400 to 450 nanometers, like the wavelength range. There's 50 different wavelengths in there. Those will block like 20% of five of those
Mhm.
wavelengths. So
Okay. So they're
they
not
might be
as
okay.
good.
They might be okay during the day for screen use, but they don't block it at night to the extent that we're talking about with the orange ones.
Okay. Can you comment on the use, and I'm going to put this in quotation marks, wide spectrum lights for improved health? So they're all in the home hardware store, full spectrum
I,
lighting.
um, I actually haven't looked at so like a full spectrum.
Oh,
Well, I mean,
but
I
they're
think
LEDs.
well, they're
Yeah.
LEDs, and I don't know if they actually they technically they can't be full spectrum because
Right.
they'll always be missing. And Scott's going to talk about this. They're always missing the infrared portion. So they
Yeah.
technically, and they don't, there's no lights inside that'll have the UV. So they're always going to be artificial, if you will. Another issue with LEDs, and I don't want to freak people out, is that they flicker. So an interesting,
Right.
which means to save energy, to save energy. For some reason they turn on and off about 100 times a second, which we can't see with our naked eyes. But if you take your cell phone and do a slow motion video of the bulbs in your house, you'll see it. And that actually, we can't perceive it, but our nervous system can. And so it can put people in their nervous system kind of in a state of heightened alert, which is not necessarily a state in the nervous system for healing and thriving.
Interesting. So this is a bit of a complicated one. So I'm a fan of Huberman Lab podcast. So Carrie said, don't wear prescription glasses when out in daylight, but I'm sure you're going to want to adjust that. Andrew Huberman points out that prescription glasses, when needed, can help focus the light to the right part of the eye. So who should I believe?
Uh, um, the issue with a lot of prescription lenses is that they block UV, frankly. It's not the
Hmm.
blue per se, although some of them have the blue as well, is that they block a part of the light. And so, yes, they can help focus because where the receptors are that I'm talking about need that light signaling and they need it to bend. But when we're also bending the light, we're not bending the light to the visual. The glasses bend the light to the visual receptors, visual sensors, right? So that we can see our world around us. These melanopsin receptors are in a different location than that. So even if those lenses are bending it to the visual receptors, they're not directing them to those blue light sensors. So I have had great experience with clients doing it. I've worked with lots and lots of people. And the best thing that I've seen is for clients to take those breaks and take those glasses off of their head because you're not filtering any of the light, whether it's a little bit of the ultraviolet, whether it's a little bit of the blue, you're getting unadulterated light and the sensors can have full access to it. So, you don't have to go blind outside, but naked
Hmm.
eyes for sure whenever you can.
What about for people that wear contacts? Because is that going to block some of the important wavelengths as well?
It will block some of the ultraviolet as well. So I've trained now through the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, a couple of ophthalmologists, optometrists,
Yeah.
ophthalmologists, and they have found actually that there are some contact lenses that lens companies that have ones that don't block ultraviolet light. The dailies, the
Okay.
Alcan dailies, for example, has some of them that don't do that. And so there are some contact lenses that can be better than others, but the issue there is blocking the ultraviolet. We didn't even get to talk about that, but the ultraviolet
Yeah.
light
Yeah.
signaling also matters
Really
for the eyes.
important.
Mhm.
Okay. Even though we're told that that's the very wavelength that damages our eyes. Like I get
Why?
this question
Yeah, I
all the
know.
time.
We have ultraviolets in the same way we have blue sensors in our eyes. We have ultraviolet sensors that dictate things for our body.
Okay.
I'll come back and give a whole
Yeah.
history of ultraviolet light for research.
I'm going to take you up on that. So there are systems which claim to code, so we're going to say maybe infoceuticals
Yeah,
that
yeah,
claim to code quantum frequencies into water.
sure.
Thoughts about that? For real,
Um,
not for real?
I tested those systems. The infoceuticals are for real. They do encode them. You can. So when water holds a frequency or a code, the little tiny water molecules actually can bond to other water molecules to form a shape. And that shape can have a resonance. Like, for example, you could draw a pyramid and create a pyramid, and someone could use a fine measurement tool, and that pyramid will have a vibration to it. So all you're doing is encoding vibration through shape. And so that absolutely can happen in water.
Okay.
But think about then, let's translate that one extra step. What about if we're full of water or the water we drink is near us? What about our thoughts, our words, what's around us? So I highly encourage people to be aware of the fact that water can hold that information and what information are you feeding your water.
Wow. I'll just let that sit. Um, I think we didn't explicitly answer this question of people that have already had cataract surgery and have artificial lenses and they can't take them out.
Can't do
So
anything about it, right? So
yeah.
here's the deal. I think beyond light signaling, I think fear is the worst thing for our health, right?
Okay.
Fearing something. And so I've worked with clients who have cataracts or intraocular lens replacements. And as long as you start to sync up the signals. So in these instances, I want these clients to also get light on their skin, because in the same way that we've got really concentrated blue light receptors, blue light sensors in our eyes, we also have them kind of in a diffuse way on our skin. And so if the brain can start to say, okay, I'm perceiving this from my eyes and this from my skin, slowly you can sync it up through the innate intelligence, the resilience of the human body. But I do have them use their skin as a second eye, if you will, or a third eye.
Okay. I'm just noticing the huge number of questions. So I'm gonna, so just a couple people have said, oh my gosh, there's so many terms being thrown out. To the best of our ability, Megan is searching for those terms, and we're going to give you guys a resource page that will accompany the recording with some of the words and the companies and the recommendations.
Can I say
Also,
something to
yeah,
this too,
yeah, go
though?
ahead.
Because this was a new language for me about
Right.
13 years ago, and and you listen to these things over and over again, and maybe Ellie, you experience the same thing. If you
Yeah,
listen to these over again, all of a
yeah,
sudden this language becomes familiar. So if this is the first hearing of it, I highly
yeah.
encourage you to even listen to this one again and again, or then when Scott comes, listen to it. And I'm not sure who else you have lined up,
Hmm.
but listen to them over and over, because the language starts to sort itself out
Right.
once you repeat it enough.
Yes. And the other thing for people is Carrie has graciously offered to give us a little mini PowerPoint, which is going to have some diagrams and terminology on there. Again, it will be freely available with the recording.
Yep.
Um, so this person's asking a whole bunch of questions. Uh, about different types of therapy, I guess, homeopathic therapy, energetic therapy, peptide therapy. So some of these, we'll call them complementary therapies. Do they complement quantum, or
They
do you have
absolutely
to toss
complement it.
everything else out when you go quantum?
No, no. So what I say in clinical practice is when clients come to me, they've got a bunch of great tools that they're already using. They probably have worked through their nutrition. They've probably have done homeopathy
Yeah.
or frequency therapy. You name it, a chiropractor. There's great therapies out there. This, I say, is the foundation that makes those therapies more effective. And if you think about it, I love Ayurveda. I love traditional Chinese medicine. We're not taught as Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine practitioners these days about light, because when those systems were developed, people couldn't help but have been
Right.
connected with nature and light in the ways that we've discussed. And so we're just kind of putting the human being, the human body back into some really key foundations that then these other things work better.
Okay. I really want to ask this question because I'm sure many people have it on their mind. I have had skin cancer in capital letters and need to be careful about sun exposure. How should I manage that
Yeah,
with these
sure.
recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so a couple of things, and again, that's interesting that skin cancer is another area of research where they're understanding that this artificial light, they're studying this high energy visible light because it's happening. The growing rate of the largest rate of growing skin cancer is in office workers, in indoor office workers.
Wow. Can
Right.
you just say that again?
Skin,
The
yeah,
highest
the
growing rate
highest
of
growing rate
skin.
of skin cancer is in indoor office workers currently.
Okay.
And
Hope
so
everyone, because we have this, like I call them medical myths, right? We've been told things for so long that we believe them to be true. And one of them is that the sun causes cancer.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't want anyone to go out there and fry, right?
Right.
But what I am saying is smart sun exposure on the skin and through the eyes is something that none of us, unless we're learning this stuff, is really getting. It's not generally a part of our daily lives. And so if skin cancer is a concern for you, you can actually go outside and get light on the skin and massive benefits when that ultraviolet light isn't there either.
Hmm.
And that would be in that first hour or so of the morning and the last hour before sunset. And so start there and start with those are gentle wavelengths of light, and just start to understand how your body is reacting to it. And I actually have had clients with melanoma. There's the other interesting study, but my experience with my clients, but the study is fascinating, and it's one that shows that people who have been diagnosed with melanoma, and this is a long study that was done, but in clients who have diagnosed melanoma, those who get more sun exposure have the lowest death rates. Again,
Yeah. It's really the opposite of what we've been taught.
what
And,
we've
I'm
been
a
taught.
physician, so I got totally
I
brainwashed.
know, I know.
Um, How do you protect yourself? Do you have like 5 more minutes?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. How do you protect yourself against other people's Wi-Fi? So you can turn off your own Wi-Fi. Say you live in a condo, a apartment building, and everybody around you has Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about how Wi-Fi is most impactful the closer it is to you. So
Okay.
I work on the principle first of distance, right? So how far away can I position, like, even if I have my Wi-Fi router on, how far away can I position my desk, right, from that? And so think about the distance. I don't have wireless stuff like headphones, Apple Watch. Like I choose not to put them on my physical body for I think pretty solid reasons. And so with other people, then again, you have to ask yourself, okay, where might their wireless routers be in conjunction to my bed? Can I position my bed differently? And then lastly, there are actually some tools out there that are doing something called harmonizing, and they're doing it effectively. This is a whole rabbit hole, so
Hmm.
you have to have the capacity to dive down. But the researcher who's been doing this for 50 years now, and he's harmonized Wi-Fi in the scale of cities, talking whole cities. His name
Wow.
is Ibrahim Karim, and he teaches biogeometry.
Wow.
And it brilliant, brilliant. But he has some tools that are available to the public that you could use to change the way the energy and the wireless radiation is being received by the human body.
Wow, that's fascinating. Um, this question is being asked again, and I'm sure it'll be asked again. So I live on the west coast of Canada. We get a lot of rain like this week. Can enough light reach us under an umbrella?
Enough light can reach you under the umbrella. You absolutely can. The whole part is like, now that you're aware of this, at least for me, at least when I became aware of
Hmm.
this, I started just to go outside more, and it's this
Right.
cumulative effect. And so I did notice a difference within like 3 days, but then it got, kept doing it, and it just kept feeling better and better. And so do the best you can with the environment that you're in, and
Yeah.
start to just accumulate more and more of those exposures.
Okay. So yes, incandescent bulbs have red spectrum waves. That's what makes them more full spectrum than LEDs.
Yes, and not just red,
Um,
but all of the infrared too that we're missing.
is it important to be outside at sunrise in particular, or any time during those first 2 hours?
I used to be, when I had a smaller reach, well, really, I was just working in my local community. I would say get
Hmm.
outside at sunrise, because the earliest sunrise in Michigan was like 6 o'clock in the morning. And
Right.
then Norway contacted me, Greenland, the Arctic Circle. And, and I say the body is smart enough that as long as the first true light signaling you're getting into your eyes is natural light, it can be 2 hours after sunrise. I don't want you waking up at 3 a.m. for sunrise. Wake up naturally,
Yeah.
go outside, basically.
Here's a great question as we wrap up. Is there a good book on this?
Oh God.
I do not
Um,
know of one yet.
I don't either.
Maybe you're
I've
writing
been
one.
asked. I know. I've been asked. No, there's not one great book on this. So unfortunately, I can't say there is. But what I
Okay.
think you've realized, Ellie, is that there are podcasts, right?
Yeah.
That where people can really start to get this information and start to assimilate it in different ways. So
Yeah. And maybe this is a great time to say, tell us about your podcast. How can people reach you? What do you offer?
sure. So I do have a home on Instagram if anyone's on there, where I basically I put this stuff out for free in small bites all throughout the week. Um, I do have my own personal YouTube channel at Carrie B Wellness. That you'll find videos there, and I try to keep the videos to about 8 to 10 minutes, so nothing too overwhelming.
Hmm.
I do a podcast with a co-host called Quantum Conversations with my friend and colleague Sarah Kleiner in this space. Again, we try to break it down. Like, let's make this practical, break it down. And then the institute that I work with for applied quantum biology, they have their own podcast as well that I absolutely love. Little more on the sciencey side. So if you're interested in
Hmm.
that, that is the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. So great places to
Fantastic.
kind of go. And then again, carriebwellness.com for my courses if you're interested as well. Oh yeah,
Okay.
Jacob Lieberman does a nice job with his books as well. So yeah,
Okay. I'm not
that's a good
familiar with
recommendation.
him. So
He's
Jacob Lieberman.
Yeah, that's a good recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. I am so appreciative. You've just brought a wealth of knowledge, so much so that people are leaving slightly overwhelmed.
I
But I would
know,
say
I
that's
know.
a great way to leave because it means there's more to learn. And the more you learn, like what I love about quantum biology, it's accessible and free. And pretty much anyone can implement some of the strategies and start improving their health.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I encourage you if something that I know it's overwhelming. So what I tell people is if you heard something and it resonated with you,
Yeah,
whether it was morning light or get a pair of blue blockers, start there.
right.
Start there. It's a great way then just to start to introduce an awareness about light in your life again.
And the very last thing, I often end these sessions with a survey because we really want your feedback. Did this hit home for you? What did you learn? And even more important, what suggestions do you have for future speakers? So I'm just going to ask Megan to post the link for the survey again so that's on the screen. And I'm going to say thank you, Carrie, so much. This was amazing.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone. It was just great connecting with a different community. So I'm so grateful. And again, reach out, right? Reach out if ever you need
Yep,
any assistance. And I look forward to chatting with you again, Ellie.
sounds good. Bye bye.